Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku had Aizawa's quirk and Ofa but make Aizawa's quirk better when Deku has it, and don't make him weak and shy, give him confidence, and have him learn some martial arts. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world is not fair. That was a lesson most children learned gradually, through missed toys or scraped knees. Izuku Midoriya learned it in a sandbox, under the scorching heat of a Musudafu afternoon, when he was 4 years old. But unlike most who learned this lesson with tears and resignation, Izuku learned it with a sudden, chilling clarity. "Stop it, Kaken," Izuku said. His voice didn't tremble. Even at 4, standing between a crying boy and the small gang of bullies led by Katsuki Bakugo, there was a strange stillness to him. "He's crying. You've heard him enough." Bakugo, blonde hair spiky and eyes wild with the arrogance of a prodigy, scoffed. Small explosions popped in his palms, smelling of burnt sugar and danger. "Get out of the way, Deku, unless you want to get toasted too. You don't even have a quirk yet. You're nothing." Bakugo lunged, his right hand raised to deliver a stinging explosion to Izuku's shoulder, a warning shot to put the quirkless, useless boy in his place. Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't cover his face. He simply looked. Instinct took over. A switch deep within Izuku's genetic code, dormant until this moment of genuine threat, flicked upward. He felt a sudden, cold pressure behind his eyes, like a headache reversed, expanding outward. The world seemed to sharpen, colors becoming hyperreal, while the ambient noise of the cicadas faded into a dull hum. He locked his gaze onto Bakugo. Click. The sensation was immediate. It felt like reaching out with an invisible hand and severing a taut wire. Bakugo's hand connected with Izuku's shoulder, but there was no heat. There was no pop. There was only the dull thud of flesh against flesh. Bakugo stumbled, his momentum carrying him forward awkwardly. He stared at his hands, confusion twisting his features. He strained, trying to ignite his sweat, but nothing happened. It was as if the spark plugs of his soul had been ripped out. My quirk?" Bakugo whispered, panic seeping into his voice. He looked up, and for the first time, he saw Izuku. Really saw him. Izuku's eyes, usually a warm, vibrant green, were glowing. It wasn't a soft luminescence. It was a piercing, radiant crimson light that seemed to cut through the air. His hair, dark green and unruly, was defying gravity, floating eerily around his head like a halo of underwater seaweed. "What did you do?" Bakugo shrieked, swinging a quirkless fist. Izuku sidestepped. It was a clumsy movement. He was a toddler, after all, but without the threat of explosions, Bakugo was just a boy with poor balance. Izuku pushed him. Bakugo fell into the dirt. The 2 lackeys behind Bakugo tried to activate their quirks, one extending his fingers, the other trying to sprout wings. Izuku swept his glowing gaze across them. Click. Click. Their transformations shattered instantly, retreating into their bodies. Silence descended on the playground. The crying boy behind Izuku had stopped sniffling, staring at his savior's back with wide, terrified eyes. "I think that's enough," Izuku said. The cold pressure behind his eyes was still there, a reservoir of power he didn't know how to close. He felt strong. He felt in control. Bakugo scrambled backward, dirt on his face, looking at Izuku like he was a monster. You stole it. Give it back." Izuku blinked. The red glow faded. His hair dropped back down. Immediately, a small pop sparked in Bakugo's palm, startling the blonde. "I didn't steal it," Izuku said, looking at his own hands. He felt a strange exhaustion, but also a thrill. "I just turned it off." That day, the hierarchy changed. Izuku Midoriya was no longer the quirkless Deku. He was something else. Something that made even the loud, explosive Katsuki Bakugo hesitate. He was the boy who could look at a god and make him mortal. The diagnosis came 2 days later. Dr. Tsubasa sat in his chair, adjusting his glasses as he looked over the charts. He glanced at Inko Midoriya, then down at the small boy sitting on the examination table. The boy wasn't fidgeting. He was sitting with his hands on his knees, observing the room with an intensity that made the doctor uncomfortable. It's a mutation, Dr. Tsubasa said, tapping the X-ray. A fascinating combination of your husband's genes and a dormant trait in your lineage, Mrs. Midoriya. It creates a specific interference wave emitted through the ocular nerves. Is it, like the pro-hero eraser head? Inko asked, wringing her hands. She had looked up eye-based quirks online. Similar, but fundamentally different in potency, the doctor said. He looked at Izuku. Izuku, can you activate it for me? Izuku nodded. He focused on the doctor. The red glow ignited, and his hair began to float. The doctor tried to use his own minor quirk, a simple ability to elongate his earlobes. Nothing happened. He checked his stopwatch. Okay, Izuku. Look away. Izuku looked at the wall. The doctor tried to stretch his earlobes again. Still nothing. 5 seconds passed. 30 seconds. A minute. The doctor's brows furrowed. Still erased. It wasn't until the 4-minute and 30-second mark that the doctor's quirk returned. He gasped, rubbing his ears. Extraordinary. What is it? Inko asked, alarmed. Eraserhead, the hero you mentioned, has to keep his eyes on the target. If he blinks, the effect breaks, the doctor explained, scribbling furiously. Your son, however, once he tags a target, the erasure persists. It seems his gaze applies a status effect that lingers within the target's quirk factor for a set duration. Currently it's nearly 5 minutes. As he grows, it could be longer. He looked at Izuku with a mix of awe and something akin to wariness. And unlike most ocular quirk users, his tear ducts produce a secondary film. He doesn't get dry eye. He could theoretically keep this active indefinitely, provided he has the physical stamina. That's amazing, Izuku! Inko cried, hugging him. Izuku didn't smile. He was processing the information. So, I can make bad guys normal? Yes, the doctor said. But be careful, kid. People rely on their quirks. Taking that away, it frightens them. It feels like a violation. You have a powerful quirk, but to many, it will feel like a villain's power. Izuku looked at his reflection in the darkened window of the office. The red eyes stared back. I don't care if they're scared, Izuku said softly. As long as they can't hurt anyone. 10 years later, the heavy thwack of a shin colliding with a heavy bag echoed through the grim, sweat-scented air of the Iron Lotus MMA gym. Izuku Midoriya, age 14, reset his stance. He was not the scrawny boy destined for bullying. He was lean, corded with wiry muscle that spoke of years of functional conditioning. He wore black compression shorts and a tank top soaked through with sweat. His arms were wrapped in tape. Again barked the instructor, a retired heavyweight with a scar running down his cheek named Takeshi. You're telegraphing the roundhouse. Your eyes move before your hips do. Izuku nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. He reset. He breathed in through his nose, staring at the bag. He didn't activate his quirk, he rarely used it here. This place was for building the weapon that delivered the quirk. He exploded into motion. A feint with the left jab, followed by a whip-crack right low kick that buckled the heavy bag in the middle. He flowed instantly into a spinning back elbow. Better, Takeshi grunted. Your quirk makes them mortal, Midoriya. But it doesn't knock them out. Never forget that. Once you take their power, you have to be the one with the superior violence. I know, Sensei, Izuku said, his voice steady and calm. Growing up had been isolating. The doctor was right. The other kids didn't bully him, but they didn't befriend him either. They walked on eggshells around him. Even the teachers seemed wary to raise their voices at him, terrified he might glare and strip them of their identity for an hour. The isolation didn't break him. It forged him. He realized early on that erasure was a support ability. If he erased the villain's quirk, the villain was still a criminal, often an adult, and often violent. Izuku needed to be able to subdue a grown man with his bare hands. So, he trained. He studied biology to understand weak points. He studied physics to understand leverage. He studied judo, Muay Thai, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He turned his body into a machine designed for incapacitation. He checked the clock on the wall. I have to go, Sensei. School, Takeshi nodded. Stay out of trouble, kid. And stop terrifying the locals. I only terrify the ones who deserve it, Izuku replied, grabbing his school bag. Aldera Junior High was a place of noise and mediocrity, two things Izuku had little patience for. He walked through the halls, his posture straight, his eyes forward. Students parted for him like the Red Sea. He entered the classroom and sat at his desk. Bakugo was already there, feet up on the table, surrounded by his sycophants. Bakugo and Izuku had a strange relationship. They weren't friends. They were barely rivals, because rivals implied a back and forth. Since that day in the sandbox, they had fought 4 times. Izuku had won all 4 times. Bakugo hated him with a burning passion, but he also respected the hierarchy. He knew he couldn't beat Izuku in a fight, so he tried to beat him in everything else: grades, popularity, volume. All right, settle down, the teacher said, walking in with a stack of papers. You're all 3rd years now. It's time to think about your futures. He threw the papers into the air dramatically. But I know you all want to be heroes. The class cheered, quirks activating in a chaotic display of fire, stretching limbs, and floating objects. Hey, teach! Bakugo yelled, silencing the room. Don't lump me in with these extras. I'm going to the top. I'm going to UA High. Ah, yes, Bakugo, the teacher noted. You have excellent test scores. And oh, Midoriya applied to UA as well. The room went dead silent. Usually, this would be the part where people laughed, where they mocked the dreamer. But nobody laughed at Izuku Midoriya. Bakugo turned slowly in his chair. His eyes narrowed. Deku, Katsuki, Izuku acknowledged, not looking up from his notebook. He was sketching a diagram of the hero Kamui woods, analyzing the tensile strength of his wood bindings. You think you can just walk into UA? Bakugo growled. Smoke started to rise from his palms. With that creepy trick of yours? Izuku stopped writing. He slowly closed the notebook. He turned his head. It's not a trick, Izuku said calmly. It's the ultimate countermeasure. And unlike you, I don't need to destroy the city to save it. You want to go? Bakugo stood up, his chair clattering back. Sparks flew. Izuku stood up. He didn't assume a fighting stance. He just relaxed his shoulders. His eyes began to glow, a low, ominous hum filling the space between them. His hair lifted gently. Sit down, Katsuki, Izuku said. The authority in his voice was absolute. We have class. Bakugo grit his teeth. He felt his quirk vanish the moment the red light hit him. He was powerless. Again. The humiliation burned hotter than his explosions ever could. He kicked his desk, but he sat down. The teacher cleared his throat, sweating nervously. All right. Let's continue. The afternoon sun was relentless. Izuku took his usual shortcut under the underpass. It was cooler there, the shadows providing a brief respite. He was lost in thought. He knew he was strong, stronger than any student at Aldera. But was he hero material? His quirk was defensive. He lacked mobility. He lacked a finishing move against giant opponents, or non-humanoid threats. I need a weapon, he thought. Something like Aizawa's capture scarf. I need to learn to bind enemies. A sound behind him. A wet, squelching noise. Izuku spun around, dropping into a defensive crouch instantly. A massive entity of sludge rose from the sewer grate, eyes bulging and manic. A medium-sized skin suit, perfect. The villain lunged. Izuku didn't scream. He didn't freeze. Target acquired. His eyes flared crimson. Gaze of the void. The effect on the sludge villain was grotesque. The villain's quirk allowed him to be liquid, to be fluid and amorphous. Erasure forced the body to obey natural laws. The sludge instantly lost its supernatural cohesion. It didn't turn into a human. The villain was mutated permanently, but he lost the ability to manipulate his viscosity. He became heavy, thick, and sluggish. He collapsed from a towering wave into a pile of semi-solid muck. What? The villain gurgled, his voice thick and distorted. I can't move right. Fluid manipulation erased, Izuku stated analytically, backing away to maintain distance. You're just a pile of mud now. The villain snarled and tried to lunge, but without the ability to propel himself hydraulically, he just flopped forward. Izuku saw the opening. He stepped in, pivoting on his lead foot, and delivered a devastating shin kick to what appeared to be the villain's center of mass. Thwack. Arg. The villain recoiled. Give up, Izuku ordered. I can keep this up all day. You're physically compromised. Suddenly, the manhole cover exploded upward. A figure burst from the sewers, shouting with the force of a hurricane. Have no fear. Why? Because I am here. All Might landed, striking a pose. He wound up a massive fist. Texas smash. Wait. Izuku yelled, shielding his eyes. He's already. The wind pressure hit like a freight train. The sludge villain, already destabilized by Izuku's erasure, was blown apart, splattered against the tunnel walls. Izuku had to dig his fingers into the concrete wall to stop himself from being blown away. As the dust settled, All Might stood tall, his signature smile beaming. He looked at the splattered villain, then at the boy. Excellent work holding him off, young man. I apologize for the tardiness. Izuku stood up, brushing dust off his uniform. His hair settled back down. The red glow faded. You used too much force, Izuku said, his tone critical. All Might blinked, his smile faltering slightly. Excuse me? I had neutralized his quirk. He was solidifying. A punch of that magnitude in a confined space. You could have caused structural damage to the tunnel, or killed him if he was fully solid. Izuku pointed to a crack in the ceiling. Inefficient. All Might stared at the boy. Usually, fans screamed. They cried. They fainted. They didn't critique his collateral damage control. Yes. Well. Safety first. All Might laughed nervously. He quickly scooped the villain's remains into soda bottles. I must be going. Justice waits for no one. Wait, Izuku said. He didn't ask for an autograph. He stepped forward, his eyes intense. I have a question. All Might paused, crouching to jump. Be quick, my boy. I have a quirk that erases other quirks, Izuku said. I can make any villain mortal. But society thinks it's a villain's power. They fear it. Can a hero who rules through fear, can he really be the symbol of peace? All Might looked at the boy. He saw the fire in those green eyes. Not the fire of a fanatic, but the cold, hard resolve of a soldier. Fear and respect are two sides of a coin, All Might said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming more serious. It is not the power that defines the hero. It is how he uses it. If you use that power to save, the fear will turn to awe. With that, All Might launched himself into the sky. Izuku watched him go. Ah, he muttered. I suppose that works. He didn't notice the bottle of sludge falling from All Might's pocket as he leaped. 20 minutes later, the city was on fire. Izuku heard the explosions from 3 blocks away. He smelled the smoke. His body moved before his mind made the decision. He arrived at the shopping district to find chaos. Flames licked the sides of buildings. Heroes were standing around, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady, doing nothing. They were paralyzed. My wood is useless near fire. I can't get close. There's a kid hostage. Izuku pushed through the police line. Let me through. Stay back, kid. A policeman shouted. Izuku ignored him. He looked at the center of the inferno. The sludge villain had escaped. And he had a hostage. Explosions ripped through the sludge. Blonde hair. Screams of rage and terror. Katsuki? The villain was using Bakugo's explosion quirk to keep the heroes at bay, wearing him like a suit of explosive armor. Bakugo's eyes met Izuku's across the flames. They were filled with tears. He was suffocating. Izuku's backpack hit the ground. Hey! Stop! Death Arms yelled. Izuku didn't stop. He sprinted. Analysis. The villain is hiding behind the explosions. The heat prevents approach. Solution. Turn off the heat. Izuku skid to a halt 20 meters from the villain. He took a deep breath. The smoke stung his lungs, but he ignored it. He widened his eyes. Gaze of the void. Maximum output. Izuku felt the strain immediately. He wasn't just erasing one quirk. He was trying to target the villain and Bakugo simultaneously to stop the volatile reaction. The world went gray. The red light from his eyes pierced the smoke like lasers. Click. Instantly, the explosions ceased. The roaring fire around the villain died down, leaving only the burning buildings. The sludge villain shrieked as his liquid body turned heavy and sluggish again. You! The villain roared, recognizing the boy from the tunnel. I'll kill you! He tried to swing a sludge tendril, but it was slow. Heavy, Izuku charged. He moved with the precision of a martial artist. He ducked under a clumsy swing. He wasn't aiming to punch the villain, he was aiming for the hostage. Katsuki! Breathe! Izuku yelled. He reached the villain. The sludge was thick, like drying cement. Izuku jammed his hands into the muck, finding Bakugo's collar. Let him go! Izuku pulled. He planted his feet, using perfect judo leverage. He wasn't stronger than the villain, but he was exploiting the villain's sudden loss of structural integrity. With a roar of effort, Izuku ripped Bakugo free from the sludge, tumbling backward onto the pavement. Cough! Hack! Bakugo gasped, retching. Stay down, Izuku commanded. He stood up, placing himself between Bakugo and the villain. The villain was furious. He loomed over them, a mass of semi-solid muck. Give him back! Izuku locked eyes with the monster. His eyes burned dry, but the secondary film protected him. He didn't blink. He held the gaze. You have no power here, Izuku hissed. You are nothing but mud. The villain hesitated. The fear of being quirkless, the sudden vulnerability, paralyzed him. Suddenly, a shadow fell over them. All Might appeared, but not in the sky. He slid in from the side, blood coughing from his mouth, steam rising from his body. He wasn't smiling. He looked angry. Angry at himself. I really am pathetic, All Might growled, his voice deep and vibrating with power. I told you what a hero was, and then I let you do the work for me. All Might grabbed Izuku and Bakugo, pulling them back. Detroit. Izuku kept his eyes locked on the villain. I'll hold his quirk down. Smash him, smash! The punch changed the weather. The updraft created a whirlwind that extinguished the fires and scattered the sludge villain across the entire block. Rain began to fall from the sudden atmospheric pressure change. Izuku stood his ground, shielding his eyes from the dust. When the silence returned, the crowd erupted. The aftermath was predictable, yet frustrating. The pro-heroes scolded Izuku. You were reckless! Kamui Wood shouted. You could have been killed. You interfered with professional work. Death Arms added. Izuku stood there, wiping soot from his face. He listened until they were finished. Then he looked up. Interfered? Izuku asked coldly. You were standing there watching him die. My quirk neutralized the threat in 2 seconds. If I hadn't stepped in, Katsuki would be dead from suffocation before you figured out a strategy. Don't lecture me on efficiency when you were paralyzed by fear. The heroes were stunned into silence. The boy's gaze was heavy. It felt like a pro-hero was scolding them. On the other side, Bakugo was being praised for his strong quirk and endurance. It made Izuku sick. As the crowd dispersed, Izuku grabbed his bag and started walking home. He was tired. His eyes ached, a dull throb behind the temples. Deku! Izuku stopped and turned. Bakugo came running up, panting. He looked like a mess. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo yelled, tears in his eyes. I didn't need you. I was fine, Izuku sighed. You were dying, Katsuki. I saw the fear in your eyes. Don't lie to yourself. Shut up. I don't owe you anything. Bakugo turned and stomped away. Izuku shook his head. He'll never change. He continued his walk. The sun was setting, casting long shadows. I am here. All Might burst from around a corner, sliding to a stop in a pose. All Might? Izuku blinked. Why are you? Poof. In a cloud of steam, the muscular giant vanished, replaced by a skeletal, gaunt man with sunken eyes. He coughed up an alarming amount of blood. Ah, Izuku said unfazed. He had suspected something was wrong after the tunnel. So that's your limit. All Might wiped his mouth. You're not surprised? I analyzed quirks, Izuku said. You were losing mass. Your time in the tunnel was short. It makes sense. It's an injury, isn't it? All Might sighed, slumping against the wall. You really are sharp, kid. Yes. 5 years ago, a villain did this to me. He lifted his shirt, revealing a horrific scar that looked like a crater. Respiratory system destroyed. Stomach removed. I have about 3 hours of hero time a day, and you spend it saving us, Izuku said softly. I spend it correcting my mistake, All Might said. He looked at Izuku intensely. Young man. I have been looking for a successor. Someone to inherit my power. Inherit? Izuku frowned. Quirks are genetic. They can't be transferred. Mine can, All Might said. My quirk is called One for All. It is a torch passed from one holder to the next, cultivating power with each generation. He took a step forward. I watched the heroes stand still today. I watched them make excuses. But you, a quirkless boy, well, not quirkless, but a boy without a combat quirk, you ran in. You moved. All Might pointed a bony finger at Izuku. Top heroes have stories about their school days. Most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku clenched his fists. He remembered the feeling. The sheer need to save. You have the heart of a hero, young man. And you have a mind that puts pros to shame. But most importantly, you have a power that can level the playing field. All Might smiled, a genuine, small smile. I've seen what you can do. You can turn monsters into men. If you had the power to knock them down afterwards, you would be unstoppable. He held out his hand. Izuku Midoriya. I want you to inherit my power. I want you to become the next symbol of peace. Izuku looked at the hand. He thought about the years of isolation. The red eyes that made people flinch. The martial arts training in the sweaty gym. The desire to protect people who feared him. If he took this power, if he combined the ultimate defense of erasure with the ultimate offense of One for All, he wouldn't just be a hero. He would be the null point. The absolute zero where villainy went to die. Izuku reached out and gripped All Might's hand. His grip was strong, callous from years of punching bags. I'll do it, Izuku said, his green eyes burning with determination. I'll take it. And I'll make sure no one ever has to be afraid while I'm watching. All Might grinned. Then let's get to work. 2 weeks later, the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. You want me to what? Izuku asked, looking at the mountain of trash. Clean the beach. All Might shouted in his muscle form. He was showing off. It is the perfect training for your vessel. Izuku looked at the rusted trucks and refrigerators. He took off his shirt, revealing a torso of hardened muscle. He was already shredded. All Might paused. Oh. You are already quite fit. I've been doing MMA since I was 8, Izuku said, stretching his arms. Conditioning isn't the issue. My body can handle stress. I need to learn to handle your power. All Might deflated into his skinny form. Right. Well, that saves us about 10 months, he scratched his head. Okay, change of plans. We're going to a private gym. I need to teach you how to regulate output. If you use 100% of my power with your current build, you won't explode. But you might break a limb if you aren't careful. Efficiency, Izuku nodded. Teach me to use 5%. That should be enough to complement my martial arts. All Might looked at the boy with renewed respect. Most kids wanted to smash buildings. This kid wanted to calculate percentages. Very well, All Might plucked a hair from his head. But first eat this. Izuku stared at the hair. That is unsanitary. Just eat it. 10 months later, the UA entrance exam. Izuku stood at the gates of UA High. He wore a simple track suit. He didn't look nervous. He looked ready. He walked into the orientation hall. President Mike was screaming about robots. Izuku tuned him out, reading the handout. Robots. No quirks to erase. Pure physical combat. A voice sneered. Looking for the exit, Deku? Izuku glanced at Bakugo. Looking for the high score, Katsuki, TCH. When the gates to Battle Center B opened, Izuku didn't wait for the start signal. As soon as President Mike shouted start, he was gone. He channeled One for All. He felt the power coursing through him, not like a borrowed coat, but like lightning in his veins. He kept it low. 5%. Full cowling. Green lightning crackled around his body. A 3-pointer robot lunged at him. A massive metal claw swiped down. Izuku didn't dodge. He stepped in, eyes open. Threat assessment, mechanical. He didn't use erasure. He didn't need it. He drove a quirk-enhanced fist directly into the robot's central joint. The metal crumpled like paper. The robot exploded backward. Izuku didn't stop to watch it fall. He was already moving to the next target. In the observation room, the judges watched the screens. "Who is that kid?" Midnight asked, licking her lips. "He moves like a pro. No wasted movement," Snipe observed. "He's taking out the joints. He knows anatomy, even mechanical anatomy." In the back of the room, a man in a black sleeping bag cracked one eye open. Shota Aizawa watched the screen. He watched the green lightning. He watched the cold, calculated expression on the boy's face. Then, he saw the boy look at another examinee who was panic-firing a laser naval laser. The boy's eyes glowed red. The laser stopped instantly, preventing friendly fire. Aizawa sat up. "Erasure?" Aizawa muttered. "But he has a strength enhancer too? Interesting, isn't it?" Nizu giggled, sipping tea. "That is All Might's protege." Aizawa narrowed his eyes. "He fights like a brawler. But he thinks like an assassin. Logic. I like it." Back on the field, the zero-pointer rose. A massive behemoth of metal blocking out the sun. Students ran. Screaming. Izuku stopped. He heard a whimper. Uraraka Ochako was trapped under rubble. Izuku looked at the robot. It was too big to punch apart with 5%. "Go higher." He crouched. The concrete beneath his feet cracked. "One for all, 20%. He launched himself into the air. He soared higher than the robot's head. The wind roared in his ears. He clenched his fist. He didn't just swing wild. He aimed. He visualized a penetration point. Smash! He struck the robot's head. The metal shattered. The shockwave blew the robot's upper torso clean off its chassis. Izuku fell. As he plummeted, he grabbed a piece of floating debris, slapped by Uraraka earlier, to slow his descent, then kicked off the side of a building to roll safely onto the ground. He stood up, shook out his hand, bruised, not broken, and looked at the destruction. The buzzer sounded. Izuku exhaled, steam rising from his skin. The red glow in his eyes faded. He looked at his hand. The power was his. The vision was his. UA High was just the beginning. The adrenaline of the sludge villain incident had long since evaporated, replaced by the sterile, fluorescent reality of the local police precinct's infirmary. Izuku Midoriya sat on the edge of a paper-covered examination table, his shirt off, revealing a torso that looked less like it belonged to a junior high student and more like it had been carved from marble by a sculptor obsessed with anatomical efficiency. A paramedic was applying a butterfly bandage to a small cut on his cheek. "You're lucky, kid. That villain had enough crushing force to turn bone to powder. You got away with scratches." Izuku didn't flinch as the antiseptic stung. "I didn't get away with anything," he corrected calmly. "I controlled the engagement distance. He couldn't generate crushing force because I neutralized his viscosity. He was just heavy fluid." The paramedic blinked, capping the bottle. "Right. Well, you're free to go. Your mother is waiting in the lobby. She seems frantic." "She usually is," Izuku noted, hopping off the table. He grabbed his tattered school uniform shirt, grimacing at the sludge stains, and pulled it on. He walked out into the hallway, his mind already dissecting the fight. Mistakes were made. I engaged without a secure perimeter. I prioritized the hostage, which was correct, but I exposed myself to a potential second attacker. If the villain had a partner, I would be dead. Erasure requires visual contact. I have number 360-degree awareness. Izuku, a blur of tears and green fabric collided with him. Inko Midoriya was sobbing, checking his face, his arms, his hands. "I saw it on the news. You ran in. You could have died." Izuku held his mother gently, his expression softening. This was the only person for whom he dropped the soldier persona completely. "I'm okay, Mom. I had to." It was Katsuki. I know, she wept, stepping back to look at him. She wiped her eyes. "You've gotten so strong. But my heart can't take this." "You'll have to get used to it," Izuku said softly. "I'm going to UA." Before Inko could respond, a shadow fell over them. A skeletal figure in a baggy yellow suit leaned against the wall, coughing into a handkerchief. Mrs. Midoriya? The man rasped. Inko jumped. Oh. Are you with the police? In a manner of speaking, Toshinori Yagi said, offering a business card with trembling hands. I am a secretary for All Might's agency. He wished for me to speak with your son regarding the incident, a debriefing on his reckless bravery. Izuku's eyes narrowed. He recognized the man instantly. The sunken eyes, the sharp angles. It was All Might's true form. He admired the disguise. To the unobservant, this man looked like a stiff breeze would kill him. It's fine, Mom, Izuku said. I'll talk to him. I'll meet you at home? Inko hesitated, looking between the frail man and her son. Okay. But be quick. I'm making katsudon. As Inko hurried away, the air in the corridor shifted. Izuku turned to Toshinori. Secretary? Izuku raised an eyebrow. It keeps the press away. Toshinori smiled, though it looked painful. Walk with me, young Midoriya. They ended up in a small, private park a few blocks away. The streetlights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows. Toshinori sat on a bench, sighing as his joints popped. Izuku remained standing, arms crossed, analyzing the hero. So, Izuku started, cutting through the silence. You want to talk about the transfer? Toshinori choked on air. Cough. You really don't beat around the bush, do you? Efficiency, Izuku stated. You said you wanted me to inherit your power. You said it was transferable. I've been running the biology in my head for the last hour. Quirks are genetic markers, usually fixed at birth. For a quirk to be transferred, it would need to act like a retrovirus, rewriting the host's DNA, or it's an energy stockpiling anomaly that seeks a vessel. Given your muscle form and the nature of your strength, it's likely the latter. Energy cultivation. Toshinori stared at him. The hollow sockets of his eyes seemed to widen. Are you sure you're 14? I've met intelligence quirks less deductive than you. I have good eyes, Izuku tapped his temple. And I pay attention. So explain it. Properly. No metaphors. Toshinori straightened up. The playfulness vanished. You are correct. My quirk is called One for All. It is derived from a chaotic history, born from a quirk that could stockpile power and a quirk that could transfer itself. It has been passed down through 8 generations. I am the 8th holder. He held up his hand, clenching it into a fist. It cultivates power, strength, speed, durability. Each user adds their own strength to the stockpile before passing it on. It is a sacred torch. And the previous users? Izuku asked. Did they have quirks? Some did. Some didn't, Toshinori said. I was quirkless. Izuku paused. That surprised him. The strongest man in the world started with nothing. But you have a quirk, Toshinori continued, pointing at Izuku. Erasure. A powerful, rare emitter type. I checked your registry. Gaze of the Void, they call it now. It's a terrifying ability, young Midoriya. In the wrong hands, it could topple society. I know, Izuku said darkly. That's why I trained. To make sure my hands were the right ones. Exactly, Toshinori grinned. You are already a vessel. You have the discipline. You have the body. If I gave this power to someone with a weak will or a weak body, their limbs would explode. But you, he looked Izuku up and down. You've been fighting underground, haven't you? Gyms? Since I was 8, Izuku confirmed. Then you are ready physically. But mentally? One for All is heavy. It is the collective will of heroes who died fighting evil. Are you ready to carry their ghosts? Izuku looked at his hands. He thought about the fear in the sludge villain's eyes when his quirk vanished. He thought about Bakugo's helplessness. My quirk brings people down to 0, Izuku said quietly. It levels the playing field. But sometimes 0 isn't enough. Sometimes you need to be a +1 to save everyone. I'm ready. Toshinori nodded solemnly. Good. Tomorrow we begin. Not at the beach. I hear you don't need cardio. We're going to a private facility. I need to teach you how to drive the car before I give you the keys. The training facility, Day 1. The location was a nondescript warehouse in the industrial district. Inside, however, It was a state-of-the-art gym, clearly funded by All Might's massive agency earnings. Izuku stood in the center of the mat, wearing his usual compression gear. All Might stood opposite him, and his muscle formed for the moment. All right. All Might boomed. Before we transfer the power, I need to see how your body moves. I need to see your reaction time. Attack me. Izuku didn't hesitate. He slipped into a southpaw stance. Quirks? Izuku asked. Come at me with everything. Erase me if you can. Izuku's eyes flared red. Click. All Might felt the strange sensation of his power dampening. However, One for All was immense. It was like trying to drain an ocean with a straw. Izuku's erasure cut off the active flow, the engine, but the physical strength All Might possessed was still superhuman just by virtue of his mass and the residual energy in his cells. All Might didn't deflate, but he felt lighter, weaker, interesting. All Might laughed, though he moved slightly slower. It feels like walking through water. He threw a punch. It was telegraphed, massive. Izuku didn't block. He slid under the arc of the fist, grabbed All Might's wrist with both hands, used his hip as a fulcrum, and executed a perfect judo throw, Sinage. All Might, weighing over 250 kilograms in this form, was leveraged off the ground. However, Izuku couldn't complete the slam. All Might simply twisted in the air, planted his feet, and stopped the momentum with brute strength. Good technique. All Might shouted, shaking Izuku off like a puppy. Izuku skid back, panting. Your mass. It doesn't change even when the quirk is suppressed. One for All is woven into my very fibers. All Might explained. You are erasing the activation factor, but the stockpiled energy is physical. All Might puffed out of his muscle form, returning to Tashinori. He wiped blood from his mouth. But that throw. If I were a normal man, you would have broken my spine. I aimed for the shoulder, Izuku corrected. I'm not a murderer, Tashinori chuckled. Right. Listen, Midoriya. The transfer isn't just about strength. It's about capacity. Your body is a finely tuned engine. But One for All is high-octane rocket fuel. If you put it in a Honda Civic, the engine melts. You are, let's say, a military Humvee. Sturdy. But we need to reinforce the chassis. How? We are going to spend the next 2 weeks doing dynamic tension training, Tashinori said, his face serious. And we are going to work on your mind. You need to visualize the power not as a weapon, but as a part of you. Like your blood. 2 weeks later, the transfer. The sun was rising over the ocean. They were at the beach, simply because Tashinori liked the view. It's time, Tashinori said. He plucked a long, golden strand of hair from his bangs. Izuku stared at it. I really hoped you were joking about the DNA ingestion. It's the fastest way, Tashinori shrugged. Blood works too, but do you really want to drink a vial of my blood? Here it is, Izuku grimaced. Eat this. Tashinori announced dramatically. Izuku took the hair. He didn't hesitate. He was a soldier. He swallowed it dry, suppressing the gag reflex. Done, Izuku said. Now what? Now Tashinori sat down on the sea wall. We wait. It takes a few hours to digest and integrate. Go to school. Don't try to use it yet. Your body might feel hot. Feverish. Understood. The fever. School was a blur. Izuku felt like he was burning from the inside out. It wasn't painful, exactly. It felt like he had just chugged 10 energy drinks and sat in a sauna. His veins felt like they were vibrating. During math, Bakugo kicked the back of his chair. Oh, Deku. You look sick. Finally dying? Izuku turned. His eyes were glassy, sweat beading on his forehead. Not today, Katsuki. Just evolving, Bakugo scoffed. Freak. But Bakugo noticed something. The air around Izuku felt charged. Like static electricity before a storm. He pulled his foot back, unsettled. By the time Izuku got to the warehouse that evening, he was drenched in sweat. Tashinori was waiting. How do you feel? Like I swallowed a star, Izuku gasped, dropping his bag. It's loud. The power. It's loud. That's the stockpile, Tashinori nodded. It's ready. Tonight we activate it. But only a fraction. First ignition. Listen to me carefully, Toshinori instructed. If you clench your butt cheeks and yell smash, you will break your arm. That is how I use it, because I am a natural release type. You are a logical type. You need a different visualization. Izuku closed his eyes. He looked inward. He saw the power. It was a swirling vortex of rainbow light in the center of his chest. It was chaotic, violent. If I let it all out, it bursts the pipes. He imagined a breaker box. A complex series of switches and dials. Don't open the floodgates. Just turn on the pilot light. He visualized the energy flowing from the center, threading through his veins like water through a rigorous irrigation system. He didn't focus it into his fist. He spread it. To his legs. His core. His shoulders. His eyes. One for all. Full cowl. 5%. BZZZT. The sound was distinct. It wasn't the roar of wind that All Might produced. It was the sharp, high-pitched hum of electricity. Green lightning arced from Izuku's skin. It danced across his muscles, illuminating the dark warehouse. His hair stood up, not floating gently like when he used erasure, but spiked by pure electrostatic pressure. Izuku opened his eyes. The world had slowed down. He looked at dust motes floating in the air. He could count them. He looked at All Might. He could see the micro-movements of Toshinori's chest rising and falling. Whoa, Izuku whispered. His voice had a strange reverb to it. You spread it, Toshinori gasped, stepping closer. Across your whole body? On your first try? It seemed safer, Izuku said. He took a step. Crack. The concrete beneath his sneakers spiderwebbed. He had moved faster than he intended. He was suddenly 3 meters to the right. Velocity control is off, Izuku analyzed instantly. My brain is sending signals for normal muscle output, but the quirk is amplifying the result by a factor of 10? No, maybe 20. Young Midoriya, Toshinori was beaming. You're a natural. This is called full cowl. I never thought of using it that way. You're a brute force user, Izuku noted, looking at his glowing hands. You maximize output. I need to maximize utility. He looked up at a stack of crates about 15 feet high. Let's test verticality. He bent his knees. He didn't jump. He exploded upward. He cleared the crates with ease, flipping in the air, and landing on the top one. He wobbled slightly, the wood creaking under the sudden impact, but he balanced. Incredible, he murmured. Then, he felt it. The synergy. He looked down at Toshinori, gaze of the void. Usually, activating erasure felt like opening a heavy eyelid. It took a split second of focus. This time? It was instant. The red light flooded his vision before he even consciously finished the thought. The world turned high contrast, and something else happened. Toshinori stiffened. Midoriya! Turn it off, Izuku blinked. The lightning faded. The red eyes faded. He jumped down, landing softly. What happened? Toshinori was rubbing his chest. That was intense. Usually, your erasure feels like a blanket being thrown over my quirk. That felt like a vice grip. It was heavier. More aggressive. Izuku looked at his hands, his mind racing. One for all boosts physical ability, Izuku theorized, pacing rapidly. My quirk is biological. It relies on the ocular nerves and a specific emission factor in my cells. If one for all boosts my cells, it supercharges your erasure, Toshinori finished. Gods above. You can erase quirks faster and harder than before, Izuku grinned. It was a predatory, confident grin. I need to spar. Now, the long grind, months 3 to 8. The next 5 months were a grueling cycle of school, homework, and violence. Izuku didn't just train with All Might. He brought his MMA training into the mix. Month 3, he learned to regulate the percentage. 5% was his safe walking speed. 8% was his combat speed. Anything above 10% caused microfractures in his bones, which hurt like hell the next day. He decided to cap it at 8% for now. Month 5, he integrated the capture tape concept. Since Aizawa hadn't taught him yet, that would come later, Izuku improvised. He bought industrial climbing rope and practiced tying knots at high speed. It was clumsy, but effective. Month 7, the sparring peaked. All Might was in his muscle form, but limiting himself to match Izuku's 8%. They moved through the warehouse like blurs. All Might threw a right cross. Izuku didn't dodge. He activated Erasure to momentarily distract All Might, ducked under the punch, and delivered a quirk-enhanced body blow to All Might's liver. All Might grunted, sliding back. Nice shot. But you left your left flank open. All Might swept Izuku's legs. Izuku didn't fall. He hand-sprung off the ground, using the momentum to kick All Might in the chin. They separated, panting. You're getting scary, kid. All Might laughed, transforming back to skinny form. You fight like a villain. I fight to win, Izuku said, chugging water. Villains don't follow rules. Neither should I. Just try not to traumatize the other students at the exam, All Might warned. No promises. The discovery of the void. One evening, late in the 8th month, Izuku was meditating. He was trying to push the duration of his erasure. Usually, without OFA, he could hold a quirk lock for 5 minutes after breaking eye contact. He activated 5% OFA. He focused on a rat in a cage in the corner of the warehouse. Toshinori had caught it. He erased the rats. Well, the rat didn't have a quirk, but he focused on the target lock sensation. He held the focus. 10 minutes passed. 15. His eyes didn't dry out. His head didn't hurt. The energy of One for All is sustaining the biological tax of erasure, he realized. As long as I have OFA active, I can keep the erasure active indefinitely. This was the game changer. Aizawa had limits. Dry eye. Stamina. Izuku realized he was becoming a bottomless pit. A void that could swallow anyone's power and never get full. Month 10, the day before the exam, they stood on the beach again. The sun was setting. Izuku looked different. He was taller, broader. His jawline was sharper. There was a quiet intensity about him that made passers-by cross the street to avoid him. You are ready, Toshinori said. I have nothing left to teach you right now. The rest, you must learn in the field. I still can't use 100%, Izuku said, looking at his fist. You don't need 100% to be a hero, Toshinori said. You have something I never had. You have versatility. You have technique. And you have that terrifying stare. Toshinori put a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Go to UA, Izuku Midoriya. Show them what the next generation looks like. Izuku nodded. He looked out at the ocean. I will. I'm going to ace the practical. And the written? I've been studying college-level quirk theory since I was 12. I think I'll manage. The entrance exam morning, Izuku stood in front of the mirror in his room. He zipped up his track jacket. It was teal, his favorite color. He looked at his eyes. Green. Soft. He activated his quirk. Red. Sharp. He activated One for All. Green lightning. He combined them. The effect was haunting. The red eyes glowed with a core of electric green intensity. The lightning crackled not just around his body, but seemed to arc from his eyes like ethereal tears. Null point, he whispered to his reflection. Absolute zero. He turned off the power. He grabbed his bag. Mom! I'm leaving. Inko ran out, holding a bento box. Good luck, Izuku. Be careful. Don't hurt anyone too badly. I won't, Izuku smiled. It was a confident smile. I'll just stop them. He walked out the door. At the train station, he saw Bakugo. Bakugo looked tense. He was vibrating with nervous energy. Izuku walked up beside him. Stop shaking, Katsuki. You're making the platform vibrate. Bakugo snapped his head around. Shut up, Deku. I'm not shaking. I'm just warming up. Right. They stood in silence for a moment. Hey, Bakugo grunted, not looking at him. Yeah? Don't get in my way. Izuku chuckled. I won't be in your way, Katsuki. I'll be ahead of you. The train arrived. Izuku stepped on. The doors closed. The journey to become the greatest hero had begun. And he wasn't starting from zero. He was starting from a level nobody else even knew existed. The written portion of the UA entrance exam was, to put it bluntly, an exercise in silence and tension. The lecture hall was vast, filled with hundreds of students, the air thick with the scent of graphite and nervous sweat. Izuku Midoriya sat near the middle of the room. He spun his pencil between his fingers, a habit picked up from years of analyzing fight footage, and stared at the final question. It was a complex ethical scenario involving quirk usage regulations in a hostage situation with environmental hazards. Most students would write a paragraph about heroism. Izuku wrote a treatise on the legal loopholes of the Good Samaritan law, calculated the structural integrity of the hypothetical building based on the provided materials, and offered 3 distinct engagement strategies based on optimal quirk compatibilities. He finished with 20 minutes to spare. To his right, Katsuki Bakugo was scowling at his paper, scribbling furiously. He could feel Izuku's presence. It annoyed him. The nerd wasn't shaking. He wasn't mumbling. He was just sitting there, radiating a calm that felt more threatening than any explosion. Izuku glanced up. He caught Bakugo's eye. Instead of looking away, Izuku offered a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't a challenge. It was acknowledgement. I'm ready. Are you? Bakugo grit his teeth and looked back at his test, pressing so hard the lead snapped. The orientation. Everybody say hey. President Mick's voice boomed through the auditorium, amplified by his quirk to a level that rattled the fillings of everyone in the front row. Silence. Tough crowd. The voice hero shrugged, undeterred. All right, examinees. Welcome to the show. Izuku sat with his arms crossed, listening intently. He had studied the exam patterns for years. Robots. Points based on difficulty. It was a standard, if somewhat archaic, method of testing power projection. There are 3 types of villains in every battle center. Mike explained, the screen behind him flashing with 8-bit graphics. Earn points by disabling them. Excuse me. A hand shot up in the middle of the auditorium. A boy with glasses and a severe haircut stood up, vibrating with rigidity. May I ask a question? This handout clearly lists 4 types of villains. If this is a mistake, it is a grave error on the part of UA, the pinnacle of hero education. We are here to be molded into exemplary heroes. The boy spun around, pointing a finger directly at Izuku. And you! The one with the curly hair. You've been tapping your foot against the floor for the last 5 minutes. It's distracting. If you're here to mess around, please leave immediately. The auditorium went deadly silent. All eyes turned to Izuku. Usually, this would be the part where the quirkless boy shrank into his seat, stammering apologies. Izuku didn't shrink. He didn't even uncross his arms. He slowly turned his head, fixing the bespectacled boy with a flat, unimpressed stare. I'm tapping a rhythm, Izuku said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent hall without shouting. 120 beats per minute. The average heart rate of a civilian in distress. I'm calibrating my internal clock for the combat test. As for your question, Izuku nodded toward the stage. If you had waited 2 seconds, President Mike would have explained the 4th robot. It's obviously an obstacle, a 0-pointer, meant to be avoided. It's a standard trope in video games and tactical simulations. Interrupting the briefing to flex your own seriousness is inefficient. Sit down. The boy, Tenya Ida, stiffened, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He looked at the stage. Yes. The listener is correct. President Mike shouted, giving Izuku a finger gun. Number 4 is the 0-pointer. It's a gimmick. A hurdle. Best to run away. Ida bowed deeply, his face flushed. Thank you. And I apologize for my rudeness. He sat down, stiff as a board. Bakugo, sitting a few seats away, scoffed. Show off. Izuku ignored him, returning his gaze to the stage. 0-pointer. An obstacle. Or a test of priorities. Battle Center B. The bus ride was quiet. Izuku stood outside the massive gates of Battle Center B, stretching his hamstrings. He wore a teal tracksuit with reinforced pads on the elbows and knees, gear he had customized himself. He looked around. The crowd was nervous. Some were shaking, others were psyching themselves up. He saw the girl with the brown bob cut, Uraraka, taking deep breaths, trying to calm her nerves. He considered going over to wish her luck, but he stopped. Focus. This isn't a social club. This is a war zone. He closed his eyes. He reached into the well of power deep inside his chest. One for all. He didn't turn it on yet. He just brushed against it, letting the hum of energy prime his nervous system. And start. President Mick's voice rang out from the tower. The other students froze, confused. Start? There's no countdown? But the crowd was already one person lighter. A blur of teal and green lightning had already cleared the threshold. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. Follow that kid. The rampage. The urban simulation was impressive. Skyscrapers, alleyways, paved roads. But to Izuku, it was just geometry. He rounded a corner and came face to face with a one-pointer. It was a fast, wheeled drone with a target painted on its chassis. Target acquired, the robot synthesized. Izuku didn't stop running. One for all, full cowl. 5%. Green sparks crackled around his body. The world slowed down. He didn't punch it. Punching metal hurt, even with a quirk, unless you had All Might's invulnerability, which Izuku didn't fully have yet. Instead, he leaped. He pushed off the wall of a building, vectoring straight toward the robot. As he passed over it, he drove his heel down into the sensory array on top of its head. Crunch! The metal caved in. Wires sparked. The robot slumped, deactivated. 1 point, Izuku muttered, landing in a roll and springing back up without losing momentum. He turned the corner onto the main street. 3 two-pointers, large, scorpion-like tails, and a 3-pointer, a massive, tank-treaded hulk, blocked the path. Perfect. Izuku breathed in. He analyzed the 3-pointer. It had heavy armor on the front, but the joints at the shoulders were exposed cables. He charged. The 2-pointers lashed out with their tails. Visual reaction speed, enhanced. Izuku saw the attacks coming in slow motion. He ducked under the first tail, grabbed it with both hands, and, using the enhanced strength of OFA, heaved. He swung the 2-pointer like a flail, smashing it into its partner. Metal shrieked as both robots crumpled into a heap of scrap. The 3-pointer fired a rubber cannon shell. Izuku sidestepped it with a fluid slip, moving like water. He closed the distance. He didn't use a smash. He used a Muay Thai clinch. He jumped, grabbing the robot's neck cables. He pulled himself up, knees tucked. Thunder knee! He drove both knees into the robot's central processor unit located behind the head, channeling 8% of one for all at the point of impact. Boom! The robot's head was torn clean off. The chassis collapsed. 6 points. He stood amidst the wreckage, steam rising from his skin. His eyes were glowing red, not because he was erasing anything, you couldn't erase a machine, but because the intensity of his focus was bleeding into his quirk activation. The green lightning of OFA danced around the red glow of his eyes, creating a terrifying visage. Other students arriving on the scene stopped, staring at the destruction. Did he just decapitate a 3-pointer? A student with a laser navel asked, pale. Izuku didn't answer. He was already moving to the next block, the observation room. A wall of monitors displayed the carnage across 7 battle centers. The teachers of UA sat in the darkened room, taking notes. This year's crop is spirited, Midnight commented, licking her lips. Look at the explosion boy in Center A. Ferocious. And the engine boy in Center B, Snipe pointed out. Good mobility. Excellent stamina. But, a small voice chimed in. Principal Niza sat in his chair, sipping tea. Have you noticed the anomaly in Center B? He pointed a paw at the central screen. It showed Izuku. He was currently surrounded by 4 robots. He wasn't panicking. He was dismantling them with surgical precision. A palm strike to a battery pack. A sweep to a tread. A throw using a robot's own momentum. Midoriya Izuku, Niza read from the file. Quirk, Gaze of the Void. A mutation of erasure. Erasure? Cementos frowned. But he's punching through steel plating. Erasure doesn't grant physical strength. In the back of the room, standing in the shadows, Shota Aizawa watched the screen with unblinking intensity. He's not just using strength, Aizawa murmured. Look at his eyes. He's tracking trajectories. And his movement, that's not brawling. That's mixed martial arts. High level. But where does the power come from? Midnight asked. The registry says nothing about strength enhancement. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. He saw the green lightning. It looks like, no. It can't be. On the screen, Izuku engaged a cluster of robots. A student nearby was about to be hit by a stray missile from a robot. Izuku didn't just save him, he grabbed the missile out of the air, burning his glove, spun, and jammed it into the robot's exhaust port, blowing it up from the inside. Resourcefulness, Niza giggled. Awareness. And ruthlessness. He has 45 villain points. But his rescue points are currently 0. He's treating it like a sweep mission, Aizawa noted. Clear the threats first. Minimize civilian risk by removing the source of danger. It's logical. But, Aizawa leaned forward. Let's see how he handles the impossible. Niza grinned and pressed a large red button. The Titan, the ground shook. Izuku had just finished disabling a two-pointer with a precise elbow drop when the vibrations nearly knocked him off his feet. Dust billowed from the end of the main street. Buildings crumbled. From the dust, a hand the size of a bus emerged, gripping the corner of a skyscraper and crushing it. The zero-pointer. It was colossal. Far bigger than Izuku had anticipated. It towered over the city block, casting a long, terrifying shadow. Its single red eye scanned the street. The other students screamed. It's huge! Run! It's the zero-pointer! We're gonna die! The panic was infectious. The stampede began, students flowing away from the monster like water. Izuku stood his ground, analyzing. Too big to fight. Armor plating is likely 3 feet thick. Weak points, none visible. It's a force of nature, his logic dictated retreat. It's worth 0 points. Engaging is a waste of stamina and risks injury. The optimal move is to fall back. He turned to run. Ow! The sound cut through the roar of crumbling concrete. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Uraraka Ochako was trapped. A piece of the skyscraper the robot had crushed had fallen, pinning her leg to the pavement. She was struggling, her face pale with pain and fear. The zero-pointer was looming over her, its massive treads churning the asphalt, seconds away from crushing her. Izuku's logic shut down. The optimal move vanished. The points vanished. There was only the victim. And the threat. Izuku's body moved before his brain gave permission, one for all. Output regulation, override. He crouched. The concrete beneath his teal sneakers shattered into powder. Green lightning exploded from him, not as a flicker, but as a blinding aura. 5% isn't enough. 8% isn't enough. He felt the power swelling, demanding release. He gritted his teeth, feeling the muscles in his legs scream. 20%. Gra! Izuku launched himself. He didn't run, he flew. The force of his jump created a shockwave that cleared the dust on the street. He soared upward, bypassing the terrified students, bypassing the falling debris. He rose past the robot's treads. Past its torso. He was level with its face. The robot's sensors locked onto him. Threat detected. Izuku pulled his right arm back. He felt one for all coursing through the limb, glowing with veins of red and gold energy. If I punch it normally, my arm breaks. I need penetration. I need focus. He didn't make a fist. He extended his fingers, holding them rigid, reinforcing them with the binding cloth techniques he had read about, stiffening the joints. A spear hand. Martial arts style, void piercer. Smash! He drove his hand forward. But he didn't just hit the metal. He visualized the force traveling through the metal. His fingers struck the center of the robot's faceplate. KRKOM. The impact was deafening. The sheer kinetic force, concentrated into a single point, didn't just dent the metal, it obliterated it. The shockwave blew out the back of the robot's head. The massive machine groaned. Explosions rippled through its internal structure. It began to tilt backward, defeated. Izuku hung in the air for a second, suspended in the aftermath of violence. Then, gravity took hold. He was falling. Fast. Right arm, numb. Not broken. Microfractures, but usable. Legs strained. 20% took a toll. Ground, approaching rapidly. Canon Izuku would have flailed. Fanfiction Izuku analyzed. I need to decelerate. No Uraraka slapped to save me. He spotted the vertical side of a building passing by. He twisted his body in midair. He reached out with his left hand and his numb right hand, grabbing a window ledge. Rip! The stone crumbled under his grip, slowing him down slightly. He grabbed the next one. And the next. He was slowing his fall, but tearing his fingers up in the process. He reached the third floor level. He kicked off the wall, converting his vertical momentum into horizontal rotation. He tucked his chin. He hit the ground in a roll, shoulder, back, hip. He tumbled across the pavement, skidding to a halt. He lay there for a second, staring at the sky. His arm throbbed. His legs felt like jelly, but he was alive. Just like the simulation, he wheezed, lying through his teeth. Silence reigned over the battle center. The dust settled. The students stopped running. They looked at the fallen giant. They looked at the boy lying on the asphalt. Uraraka, who had been freed by the shockwaves shifting the rubble, stared at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. He destroyed it, someone whispered, with one hit. The verdict, time's up. The buzzer sounded across the city. Izuku groaned and sat up. His right sleeve was shredded. His arm was purple and swollen, but not the twisted, shattered mess All Might had warned him about. The spearhand technique had distributed the impact force better than a closed fist, directing it outward rather than back into his bones. Recovery Girl was already moving through the crowd, handing out gummies. Oh my, the small woman tooted as she reached Izuku. You really overdid it, didn't you, Sonny? I had to, Izuku said, gritting his teeth as she kissed his forehead. Standard engagement protocol. Eliminate the immediate threat to the civilian. Civilian? Recovery Girl chuckled as his bones began to knit together, draining his stamina. You treat this very seriously, don't you? Is there any other way to treat it? Izuku mumbled, feeling sleep tug at his eyelids. Nearby, Ida watched Izuku. His glasses were crooked. I misjudged him, Ida said to himself, clutching his chest. I thought he was arrogant. I thought he was distracted. But he saw the test for what it really was. While I ran, he jumped. Bakugo, who had finished in Center A, was walking past the gates of Center B on his way out. He saw the smoke. He saw the headless zero-pointer. He froze. He heard the whispers of the other students. That green-haired kid, he took it down in one shot. Bakugo's hands trembled. Not with fear, but with a complex cocktail of rage and sudden, crushing doubt. Deku? He did that? With a staring quirk? No. That wasn't a stare. That was power. The teacher's lounge. The screens were frozen on the image of Izuku's impact. 60 villain points, Midnight tallied. And the rescue points? We have to give him the full marks for the zero-pointer save, Cementos said. He risked severe injury to save a competitor. That's top-tier heroism. 60 rescue points, Niza decided. Total score, 120. That's the highest score since All Might, Snipe whistled. Aizawa stood up. He picked up Izuku's file. He has potential, Aizawa said, his voice monotone but his eyes gleaming with a rare interest. But power is nothing without control. He broke his arm because he lacks regulation. If he thinks he can break himself to save others every time, I'll expel him on day one. Oh, come now, Shota, Niza laughed. You're smiling. Aizawa turned to leave, pulling his scarf up. I'm not smiling. I'm just satisfied. It's been a while since we had a student who didn't hesitate. Aizawa walked out of the room. He looked at the photo of Izuku on the file. Gaze of the void. Plus super strength. A logical mind. A martial artist. Midoriya Izuku. Aizawa tossed the file onto his desk. Don't disappoint me, kid. 1 week later, the letter arrived. Izuku sat at his desk in his room. He held the heavy envelope. He didn't tear it open frantically. He used the letter opener. He placed the holographic projector on the desk. All Might appeared. He was in his yellow suit, striking a pose. I am here. As a projection, Izuku leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. A bit dramatic, isn't it, young Midoriya? The hologram continued. You passed the written exam with flying colors. Of course. But the practical. The video cut to footage of Izuku destroying the zero-pointer. You sacrifice your body to save another. This is the essence of a hero. The scoreboard appeared. Villain points 60, rescue points 60, total 120. Welcome, Izuku Midoriya. This is your Hero Academia. The hologram faded. Izuku looked at the screen. He looked at his hand, flexing the fingers that were fully healed. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. 120 points, he whispered. His eyes flared red for a second in the reflection of the glass. It's a good start. The uniform of UA High School was gray, stiff, and carried the weight of a national institution. For most, putting it on was a moment of giddy excitement, a realization of a childhood dream. For Izuku Midoriya, buttoning the blazer felt like donning armor. He stood in front of his mirror, adjusting the red tie. He didn't smile. He checked his pockets, a small notebook, a pen, and a roll of athletic tape. Essentials. Izuku? Are you ready? Inko's voice drifted from the hallway, laced with that perpetual anxiety she wore like a shawl. Ready, Izuku replied. He grabbed his yellow backpack. He walked out, stopping briefly to let his mother fuss over his collar. You look so handsome, she sniffled. My little hero. I'm not a hero yet, Mom, Izuku said, his voice level. I'm a student. This is just the training camp. You're too serious, she sighed, patting his cheek. Try to make friends? Please? Not just rivals or targets. Izuku's lip twitched, the ghost of a smile. I'll try. But no promises on the targets. Efficiency dictates I assess everyone. He stepped out into the Mizurufu morning. The air was crisp. As he walked to the station, his eyes scanned the crowd. Threat assessment. Exit routes. It was automatic now, a byproduct of the paranoia that came with carrying a quirk the world thought was villainous, and a power that All Might had entrusted to him. He boarded the train. He closed his eyes. One for all is quiet today. Hum at 2%. Ready to spike to 8% in 0.3 seconds. He was a weapon in a sheath. And today, he was going to see if UA had a grindstone hard enough to sharpen him. Class 1A. The door to Class 1A was massive. Logically, it was to accommodate students with gigantification quirks, but psychologically, it was designed to make you feel small before you even entered. Izuku didn't feel small. He felt the cold, hard floor beneath his shoes. He slid the door open. The noise hit him instantly. Don't put your feet on the desk. Huh! It's disrespectful to the upperclassmen who sat there before you, and to the craftsmen who built it. Shut up, Four Eyes. What junior high did you go to? The Stick-Up-Your-Ass Academy. Izuku stepped inside. The scene was predictable. Katsuki Bakugo was lounging at a desk, feet up, sneering at Tenya Ida, who was chopping the air with robotic hands. Ida noticed the door open and spun around. Ah! You! The room went quiet. Bakugo froze, his eyes narrowing as he saw Izuku. Ida marched over, stiff and formal. I am Tenya Ida, from Semi-Private Academy. I know, Izuku said, walking past him toward a desk in the back. You announced it quite loudly during the exam. Ida blinked, pivoting to follow him. Yes. Listen, I must apologize. I misjudged you. During the entrance exam, you perceived the true nature of the test, the rescue component. I was blinded by the objective, but you acted. You were the superior candidate. Izuku set his bag down. He looked at Ida. The boy was intense, rigid, but honest. Useful traits. It wasn't about being superior, Izuku said calmly. It was about priority management. The robot was a threat to a civilian. The points were secondary. If you hesitate to calculate the score, people die. Remember that. Ida looked struck, pulling out a notebook to write that down. Priority management, TCH. Bakugo kicked his desk. Don't stroke his ego, engine legs. He just got lucky. Izuku sat down, resting his chin on his hand, looking at Bakugo. Luck is a factor, Katsuki. But preparation exploits luck. You should try it sometime. Bakugo's hands started to smoke. You wanna go, Deku? Oh. It's you! A bubbly voice cut the tension. Ochako Uraraka appeared at the door, beaming. She spotted Izuku and rushed over. The plain-looking boy. You're the one who saved me. And you smashed that giant robot with one punch. That was amazing. I wanted to thank you properly. Izuku looked at her. She was open, emotional, and lacked a guard. But she had faced the 0-pointer without running away immediately. She had grit. You're welcome, Izuku said, nodding politely. Uraraka, right? Your gravity manipulation was essential for my landing. Without that debris you floated, I would have shattered my legs. It was a good assist. Uraraka blinked, blushing. Oh. Thanks? I didn't really mean to. I was just panicked. Instinctual support is still support, Izuku stated. So, Uraraka looked around nervously. I wonder who our teacher is? I hope they're nice. If you're here to make friends, you can pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. The class froze. Slowly, they looked down toward the doorway. A man was lying there, encased in a yellow sleeping bag like a metamorphic caterpillar. He rolled over, unzipped the bag, and stood up. He looked exhausted. His hair was messy, his eyes bloodshot, and he was sucking on a jelly nutrient pouch. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man deadpan. Time is limited. You kids are not rational enough. He stepped out of the bag, revealing a black jumpsuit and a capturing weapon around his neck. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Nice to meet you. Homeroom teacher? The class gasped. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a stack of blue gym uniforms. He tossed them onto the podium. Put these on and meet me on the grounds. We're doing a quirk apprehension test. The P grounds. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, a sharp contrast to the mood on the field. The students of Class 1A stood in a loose cluster, fidgeting. A quirk apprehension test? Uraraka asked, raising her hand. But what about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Aizawa turned his back to them, looking at a datapad. If you're going to be a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events. UA's selling point is freedom of style. That applies to the teachers as well. He turned back, his dark eyes sweeping over them. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school, right? Quirkless tests prohibited from using quirks. It's irrational. The Ministry of Education is procrastinating. He pointed a finger at Bakugo. Bakugo. You finished first in the practical exam. In junior high, what was your best result for the softball throw? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Then try it with your quirk, Aizawa said, tossing him a ball. You can do whatever you want as long as you stay in the circle. Hurry up. Give it everything you've got. Bakugo walked to the circle. He stretched his arms, a wicked grin spreading across his face. He glanced at Izuku. Watch this, Deku. He wound up. Dai-ai. Boom. A massive explosion propelled the ball into the stratosphere. Dust kicked up. Die. Izuku murmured. Creative. Aizawa held up his device. 705.2 meters. Whoa! The class erupted. 705 meters? That's insane. We can use our quirks as much as we want? This is going to be awesome. The atmosphere shifted. Tension broke into excitement. Students started smiling, flexing their hands. Aizawa's expression darkened. The air temperature seemed to drop. Awesome, you say? The class quieted down. You have 3 years to become a hero. Will you have an awesome attitude the whole time? Aizawa's hair lifted slightly. Fine. Let's make this interesting. The student with the lowest total score across all 8 events will be judged as having no potential. He grinned, a terrifying, predatory expression, and will be punished with expulsion. HAA? Expulsion? Uraraka cried out. But it's the first day. That's not fair. Even if it wasn't the first day, that's too unreasonable. Natural disasters. A calm voice cut through the panic. Everyone turned to Izuku. He was adjusting his gloves, looking bored. Floods. Earthquakes. Villains running rampant, Izuku continued, looking at Uraraka. None of that is fair. It's unreasonable. Heroes are the ones who overturn those situations. If you wanted to go to a fun high school, you should have gone to a normal one. UA is a trial by fire. He looked at Aizawa. If the standard is perfection, then we just have to be perfect. Efficient. Aizawa's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked at the green-haired boy. He's not scared. He's analyzing the parameters. Well said, Aizawa muttered. Welcome to the Department of Heroics. Test 1, 50-meter dash. The robotic camera set up at the finish line word. On your mark. Ida Tenya crouched next to Tsuyu Ajiri. Bang! Ida was a blur of exhaust fumes. 3.04 seconds. Like a fish in water, Ajri commented, landing in 5.58 seconds. Izuku watched. Engine legs. High torque. Limited turning radius based on gear shifts. Frog form. Explosive leg strength. Next group. Midoriya. Bakugo. Izuku stepped to the line. Bakugo lined up next to him. Don't think you can beat me in speed, Deku, Bakugo hissed. Your eyes can't catch me if I'm already gone. We'll see, Izuku said. One for all. Full cowl. 5%. Green lightning crackled softly around Izuku's legs. It was subtle in the sunlight, but the sound, the distinct bzzzt of electricity, was audible. Bang! Bakugo exploded backward, using the force to propel himself. Izuku didn't use an explosion. He used pure kinetic chain efficiency. His feet dug into the earth, reinforced by the quirk. He moved like a bullet. No wasted vertical movement. Low center of gravity. They crossed the line almost simultaneously. Bakugo, 4.13 seconds. Midoriya, 4.10 seconds. Izuku skidded to a halt, the lightning fading. He looked at the board. 0.03 of a second, Izuku noted. Efficiency wins. Bakugo stared at the board, his eyes twitching. You little. Next? Aizawa called out, ignoring Bakugo's rage. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku took the device. He squeezed. He didn't use 100% of his grip. That would crush the machine and cost the school money. He pulsed OFA into his forearm flexors. Beep. 205 kilograms. He looked over. Mizo Shoji had scored 540 kilograms. Impressive, Izuku nodded to the multi-armed student. Combined muscle density across multiple limbs. Mineta, holding his device with trembling hands, looked at Izuku's score. 205? That's like a gorilla. Izuku glared at him. Mineta squeaked and hid behind Shoji. Test 3, standing long jump. Aoyama used his laser to fly across. Bakugo blasted across. Izuku stood at the edge of the sandbox. Load the springs. He channeled 8% into his calves and quads. Jump. He cleared the sandbox entirely, landing gracefully in a roll on the grass beyond. Cleared, the machine stated. Aizawa watched, jotting down notes. He uses the strength enhancer with precision. No hesitation. But he hasn't used his primary quirk yet. Why? Test 4, repeated sidesteps. Mineta was the king here, bouncing off his balls. Izuku used OFA to move fast, blurring side to side, but Mineta's quirk was mechanically superior for this specific task. Izuku took second place. Acceptable, Izuku muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. The climax, ball throw. The test continued. Uraraka scored infinity on the ball throw, demoralizing half the class. Infinity? Kaminari gasped. That's cheating. It's physics, Izuku corrected quietly. No gravity means no downward arc. It will orbit until it hits something. Midoriya, Aizawa called out. You're next. Izuku walked into the circle. The class went silent. They had seen his speed. They had seen his grip. They knew he was physically strong, but they also remembered the rumors. He has laser eyes. He stares at people and they stop working. Izuku picked up the ball. It felt light. He stood in the center of the circle. He looked at the field. 705 meters was the mark to beat. Aizawa stood on the sidelines, his hand gripping the capture scarf around his neck. His eyes were focused on Izuku. During the entrance exam, he broke his arm to destroy the zero-pointer, Aizawa thought. He has power, but he lacks self-preservation. If he uses that 100% smash now, he'll shatter his arm again. I can't let him start his education in the infirmary. Izuku took a breath. He began to wind up. One for all. 100%. Izuku intended to use a finger flick, minimizing damage to just one digit, similar to cannon, but Aizawa didn't know that. Aizawa's eyes widened. His hair shot up. Erasure. Izuku felt it instantly. The connection to one for all didn't vanish. It was a stockpile, deep within him, but the activation mechanism, the ability to draw it out into his limbs, was severed. The lightning died. The power retreated. His arm felt heavy. Just a normal, human arm. Most students would have faltered. They would have panicked, dropped the ball, or tried to throw it with limp muscles. Izuku stopped his motion. He didn't look confused. He turned his head slowly. Across the field, Aizawa was glaring at him, his scarf floating, his eyes glowing red. That's strange, Izuku said, his voice carrying across the silent field. The power cut out. I erased it, Aizawa said, his voice dry and harsh. The entrance exam was definitely not rational enough. Even a kid like you was accepted. You have a powerful quirk, but you can't control it. You'll just incapacitate yourself again. I saw the report. You shattered your arm. And? Izuku asked, his face blank. And? Aizawa stepped forward. You can't be a hero if you're a liability. Do you expect someone to save you after you save them? That's not efficiency. That's suicide. He leaned in, his eyes burning. From what I see, you're just a reckless cannon with a broken trigger. The class held its breath. This was it. The teacher was crushing him. Izuku stared at Aizawa. Then, slowly, the corner of his mouth lifted. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a chess player who just saw mate in 3. You're right, Sensei, Izuku said. Self-destruction is inefficient. But you made a mistake in your assessment. Aizawa frowned. What? You assumed I was helpless without the power. Izuku's eyes snapped open wide. Gaze of the void. A blinding crimson light erupted from Izuku's eyes, far more intense than Aizawa's own. It cut through the distance between them. Aizawa flinched. He felt a sudden, cold pressure behind his eyes. It was invasive. Absolute. Click. Aizawa's hair dropped instantly to his shoulders. His scarf went limp. The red glow in his eyes vanished, replaced by his tired black irises. He blinked stunned. He tried to reactivate his quirk. Nothing. It was like the switch had been ripped out of the wall. What? Aizawa gasped. I erased your erasure, Izuku stated calmly. The class gasped. He erased the teacher? Is that allowed? Izuku turned back to the field. He could feel one for all flooding back into his system now that the suppression was gone. And regarding my control, Izuku said, winding up again. I've been working on it. He didn't use 100%. He didn't need to show off that much. He channeled the power through his legs, his hips, his torso, and finally his arm. A kinetic whip, one for all. 20%. Smash. The ball launched. It didn't break the sound barrier like Bakugo's, but it screamed through the air, carried by perfect technique and raw power. Izuku didn't break his arm. He didn't even break a finger. He just spun with the follow-through and stood up, shaking his hand out. Beep. Aizawa looked at the device, still reeling from the fact that his quirk was currently nullified. 705.8 meters. Izuku turned around. His eyes were still glowing red, keeping Aizawa checkmated. 0.6 meters further than Katsuki, Izuku noted. And no broken bones. Is that rational enough for you, Sensei? He blinked. The red light faded. Aizawa felt his quirk return, a slow, trickling sensation compared to the slam of Izuku's power. He rubbed his eyes. He looked at the boy. He saw the defiance. He saw the skill. And beneath the sarcasm, he saw the hunger to prove himself. Aizawa lowered the device. A slow, creepy grin spread across his face. Kid, Aizawa muttered. You really are a problem child. The aftermath. DKU. The roar was primal. Bakugo Katsuki launched himself from the group. His palms were popping with explosions. You bastard! You told me you were quirkless. You had a staring quirk, and now you have super strength too? What the hell is going on? Tell me. He was fast. Faster than the others could react. Midoriya! Uraraka screamed. Izuku didn't move. He watched Bakugo coming. He calculated the distance. 3 meters. 2 meters. He prepared to engage. A judo hip toss would neutralize the charge. Swish. A white cloth whipped through the air. It wrapped around Bakugo's chest and arms, yanking him back violently. Gah! Bakugo choked, struggling. Let me go! Stop it, Aizawa commanded. His hair was floating again, though he looked warily at Izuku, making sure the boy wasn't looking at him. Use your quirks too much, and you'll give me dry eye. Don't make me erase you again, sensei. Bakugo growled, but he stopped struggling. Aizawa released him. We're wasting time. Midoriya, get back in line. Izuku walked past Bakugo. He didn't look at him. You're too slow, Katsuki, Izuku whispered as he passed. You telegraph your anger. Bakugo stood there, shaking with silent fury. The results. The sun was setting. The tall hologram board displayed the rankings. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu, her versatility was unmatched in pure utility. 2. Izuku Midoriya, physically dominant, but lacked mobility in sidesteps compared to Mineta/Ida. 3. Shoto Todoroki. 4. Katsuki Bakugo. 20. Izuku Midoriya. Wait, no. That was the canon fear. Here he is too. Wait, let's correct that. Without the ball throw failure, and with his physical stats. 1. Izuku Midoriya, dominated dash, grip, jump, ball throw. 2. Momo Yaoyorozu. 3. Shoto Todoroki. 4. Katsuki Bakugo. The list went down. At the bottom was Minoru Mineta. Izuku looked at the board. Number 1. He felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned. It was Ida. First place, Ida said, adjusting his glasses. Impressive. You truly are a formidable opponent. You did well too, Ida, Izuku said. Your 50-meter dash is unreachable for me right now. By the way, Aizawa spoke up, rolling up the results. About the expulsion, the class tensed up. Mineta was crying. It was a logical ruse, Aizawa said flatly. To draw out the upper limits of your potential. Huh? The class shouted. Actually, Aizawa continued, looking at Izuku. That's what I usually say. But this year. I was serious. The class froze. If any of you had shown zero potential, I would have cut you. Midoriya proved his point. Efficiency matters. He turned and walked away. There are handouts in the classroom. Look over them. Midoriya, come to the faculty office later. I need to register your countermeasure quirk. It's not in your file. Understood, Izuku said. As the class began to relax and chatter, walking back to the changing rooms, Izuku felt a gaze on his back. He turned. Shoto Todoroki was staring at him. The boy with the scar and the dual-colored hair. He hadn't spoken a word all day. Izuku met his gaze. Todoroki's eyes were cold, assessing. Izuku nodded once. Todoroki didn't nod back. He just turned and walked away. Intense, Uraraka said, popping up beside Izuku. You were so cool, Midoriya. The way you stared down Aizawa-sensei. I thought my heart was going to stop. Izuku looked at his hands. They were trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump. I just did what I had to do, Izuku said. Well, you're our class rep material for sure. She cheered. Izuku looked back at the school building. The first day was over. He had survived. He had dominated. But he knew this was the easy part. The real threats, the villains, the disasters, the hidden evils, were still out there. And now, they had a target. I am the void, Izuku thought, clenching his fist. And I am watching.